On the 9th of November in the year 2000, the people of Onitsha in Anambra State, Nigeria, witnessed one of the most brutal public executions ever carried out by a vigilante group. On this day, a well-known prophet, 43-year-old Edward Okeke Onyebuchi, popularly known as Prophet Eddy, was dragged out of his home in the middle of the night by the Bakassi boys. He was then taken to the marketplace in Ochanja roundabout, where he was tortured some more before being finally executed and then set ablaze. This was a gruesome sight, and over 20,000 people in Onitsha at the time witnessed this killing. And at first thought, in hearing this story, you would think, oh my God, what in the jungle justice is going on here? However, when Prophet Eddy was being butchered like pieces of meat and set ablaze, more than half of the 20,000 people watching cheered, clapped, and hailed the Bakassi boys, almost as though they have done the nation a very big favor. In this video, we are going to talk about the Bakassi boys versus the Prophet Eddy, one of the most mysterious stories you would ever hear. What did Prophet Eddy do that was so bad that a group of vigilante boys could just end his life like that with no consequences? That was so bad that 20,000 people in Onitsha were so excited when he finally got killed. To understand the Bakassi boys versus Prophet Eddy story, you need to understand them individually. And we'll be quick with it. So let's start with the Bakassi boys. The Bakassi boys were a group of vigilante youth that originated first in Abia State in the 90s. Now, back in Abia State, in Aba to be specific, there was a high rate of crime, high rate of armed robbery. Aba was a business marketplace, and many businessmen and women were victims of thieves, armed robberies, and kidnapping. And the police could not handle it. Funny enough, the people could not even trust in the police because many of these criminals worked hand in hand with the police. And so sprung up a vigilante group that somehow took the world by storm. Mind you, there were other vigilante groups at the time in Aba, but those ones were not as competent because they probably also played a role in the criminal activities. But the Bakassi boys stood out. They were so unique in their style. They worked intelligently, and it seemed like they were managed by a professional. Another thing that made them stand out was the fact that they used charms and juju as part of their processes in finding criminals and finding who was guilty of a crime and who was not. And so their processes in Aba may have been radical because all they had to do was find a suspect, interrogate him, and if that person is believed to have been guilty of stealing, robbing, or kidnapping, he or she would be executed publicly. And that was what they did in Aba. Many people could criticize their method. Many people did criticize their method. However, for some interesting reason, it worked. The crime rate in Aba dropped. The market women and market men and businessmen and women and other people in Abia State felt a sense of safety, felt a sense of added safety with the presence or with the activities of the Bakassi boys. So whether or not the criminals they executed publicly was guilty or not guilty, the fact that they were killed publicly sent fears into the hearts of others, sent shivers into the spine of anyone who was even thinking of committing a crime. And that sort of made many people afraid of thinking of stealing or robbing, and thereby decreasing the rate of crime in Aba drastically. And with these success rates, the Bakassi boys blew up. They became famous. They became big. The Bakassi boys became popular. Everyone started hearing of their doings. People started learning of their activities and how they made Aba one of the most safest place to run your business at the time. And so other states in the southeast began clamoring for this kind of method. They began clamoring for the Bakassi boys. They were like a boy band that had just received fame, and people were trying to call them to come over to their town to perform. Now, while their success was met in Aba, the people of Onitsha were suffering a similar fate that Aba had suffered. The crime rate was at an all-time high. Even while the Bakassi boys were getting famous, the people in Onitsha organized their own similar Bakassi boys, which they call the Otta boys, OTA, the Otta boys. For the same purpose, the police was not arresting these criminals, and if any criminal is caught and arrested, they bribe the police with money, and they are set free the next day, and they are back to committing crime. And Onitsha people created, the Onitsha market men and women created the Otter Boys, a group of vigilante that should mirror the Bakassi Boys. But they could not also trust those ones because they too started engaging in criminal activities themselves. And so the government of Anambra State at the time decided that he was going to request the services of the Bakassi Boys from Abia State. And that was what happened when the Bakassi Boys came into Onitsha. It was almost as if the Messiah had landed. People were cheering, people were applauding, people were happy. It was almost like the president of Nigeria was coming to visit them. And they were so excited that the Bakassi Boys had come to make their city safe from armed robbery, kidnapping, and thieves. But this was a problem. Unlike what the Bakassi Boys had to do in Abia State, what they met in Anambra State was quite bigger than what they imagined they were coming to meet. In Abia State, they dealt mostly with thieves, armed robbers, kidnappers. However, when they came to Onitsha, they realized that, this is more than just thieves and armed robbers. They had to deal with so much more. They had to deal with witches. They had to deal with wizards. They had to deal with powerful native doctors. They had to deal with sorcerers. They had to deal with ritualists. And this kind of made their job a lot more complicated. And the good thing is, they were the perfect people for it. Because, like we've already established, they worked with charms. They were believed that they had the juju to tell who was guilty and who wasn't. They believed that they wore the necklace, and once somebody around them is guilty or has committed a big crime, the necklace would spark and tell them that, hey, a killer, a rapist, or a murderer is in our midst, and it would direct them to find this person. Their cutlass, they said, claimed when it's put on your chest would turn red, indicating that the suspect has blood on their hands. And that was what they based a lot of their execution on. So pretty much the Bakassi Boys could be on the road, they will see you, call you, put a cutlass on your body, and it shows red, they kill you. No proper investigation is done. No eyewitnesses. Nobody accused you of anything. They could even base it on a charm. And so because of that ideology that they had these powerful charms and juju, many people believed in them. And many people believed that since their cause was just, they are the best people to find the evildoers in Onitsha, the evildoers in Anambra State, the people that the police cannot ordinarily find. And it was on this ground that they met the prophet Eddy, one of the most deadliest, most dangerous sorcerer ever in Nigerian history. There were claims that the Bakassi Boys tried to catch him at least 13 times. But the prophet Eddy was always ahead of them, and he would disappear. He would see them from a mirror coming, and he would be able to do some kind of charms and juju to evade them for 13 good times. Until the Bakassi Boys went to their leader, went to their manager, a man who was in a wheelchair, who history remembers to be Ngwongoro. According to some movies' portrayal, he was, Ngwongoro, which meant the man in a wheelchair. And they believed it was that man who was in charge of the charms the Bakassi used, and it was that man who was able to consult the gods and create the charm or the power that could counter and fight that of Prophet Eddy. So the Bakassi Boys could finally catch him. So now that we know about the Bakassi Boys, let's talk about the Prophet Eddy. Let's get a little backstory here. Not much is known about Prophet Eddy's early age, where he grew up, but we know he grew up in the community of Nawgu in Anambra there. However, from what we know, at an early age, like every other person, he was a hustler. He was trying to make ends meet. And when he turned 29, he publicly announced to the whole world that he had been gifted with the powers to see the metaphysical world, to see beyond the ordinary eyes. And he claimed that this power, he got it from God in heaven. Our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, yes, the Son and the Creator of the world. That was where Prophet Eddy claimed he got his powers from. But the thing is, this was him trying to start a ministry. You have to put in mind that this was the 80s into the 90s. And this was also the period of time many men of God were springing out of nowhere. Most of the elderly men of God that we have today in Nigeria, many of them started the same way, announcing that they had the vision, announcing that they are the chosen one, announcing God have picked them. Everybody, all the men of God were trying to find their calling. Not many churches made it to this era, but Prophet Eddy was one of those supposed men of God who was trying to make a name for himself. He was probably trying to be some kind of TB Joshua. But the thing is, claiming he had this power from God worked, because at the time, many of these people were Christians. The Southeast were predominantly believers. So church was a thing. God was a thing. People believed, and people were clamoring for men of God. It was a big business then, because people needed Jesus and people needed salvation. And Prophet Eddy has come out to claim that God has given him the power to see beyond the physical eyes, that he can see and tell the future and those beats. And I think maybe that is where a lot of the words that he could see the Bakassi boys coming came from. So he claimed he had the spiritual eyes and spiritual powers. And like we've already established, this is Eddy trying to start up his ministry because he needs the money. He's trying to hustle, he's trying to make a life for himself. And so, like every upcoming minister at the time, he was supposed to create his church. And he did, except he was so unorthodox. He was a mix of Dibia and pastor. His method to religion, his method to believe, his method to expressing his God's given gift was a bit unorthodox. Most men of God would open a church and they would do, Sunday service, clap hand, preach the word of God, put offering, get your prayers. But for Eddy, he opened a healing center, one that looked and felt like a shrine. I don't know if the building still exists today, but they said once you go into his healing center, you'll see a big statue of Jesus, then a big statue of Eddy stepping on the devil, of what looks like he was standing on the devil, before you see the house and the church. And the healing center was more like a place to help people. He would see visions if you wanted reading, if you want to know who was doing in your family, if you want to know if you would win an election. And because of this thing, he had relationships with politicians and billionaires and rich men. And people did patronize him for his psychic capabilities for some reason. And I think that was how he got a lot of his money, because he associated himself with these rich men, politicians who want to win elections, who want to win offices and positions, and they would always give him money to do some kind of spiritual thing so he could win. And those people who also want to see visions, those people who want to see who, is behind their failures, and, is usually not free. However, though, he did some charitable work. He helped poor people. He helped people who had mental illness. He helped little children who were homeless and starving. He was kind and generous. He was a philanthropist for the most part. He put his money into a good use. Another thing again that we got to know about Prophet Eddy was that he was quite vocal, very vocal. He was one of those people, if Instagram was around today, he would be one of those men of God who would always criticize the government, criticize the politician, call you out on your shit and all of that. That was who he was at the time. People said he was vocal, and his outspokenness, crossed the path of a lot of people. A traditional ruler, they said, did not like him. And a group of, was it politicians who were not on his side, or whose side he did not take, did not like him. So Eddy had enemies. And I think a lot of his enemies could have been where his downfall started from. Because let's face it, as powerful as he is, he was going to be a threat to someone. As influential as he was going to be a threat to people. Not everybody was on his side. He had, if a politician is coming to meet him for his support, spiritual or social, clearly that politician would have an opponent, and Eddy will most likely be stepping on the opponents of these politicians that he supports. I don't know if you get my drift here. So he pretty much had his own enemies, and he didn't care. But this is where Eddy downfall started happening. Rumors began to spread, and I can tell you, till this day, there are still rumors. Strong, damning rumors began to spread. And you have to also put in mind that this was the early 2000s and late 90s. Rumors would spread, even up to 2005, 2006. If you remember, Nigeria did not have the internet that we have today. Not many people could access it. So, music lyrics, magazines, to learn about your favorite celebrities, we had to buy these tiny books, tiny magazines that were printed illegally, that were filled with lies. You'll see magazines. I remember as a young child, I remember seeing a magazine with Genevieve Inaji where it was written as though she said it, oh, I've slept with every politician remaining on Basanjo. I remember saying that and I believed it. It was growing up and I'm realizing that, wait, these people just printed a book filled with lies on these celebrities. They were lying on these celebrities because she never said that. Those things never happened. All the things, and our celebrities at the time could not control their images because there was no social media where they could easily just say, I did not say that or deny it. Oh, thank God for today. And that was the problem Eddy Nawgu faced back then in the 90s. People who could control the printing press took advantage of that fact. And since he was a known figure, they started printing things on newspaper, on magazines, on posters, on pamphlets. This was all for business sake because people want to sell. Clout has always been a thing. Clickbait has always been a thing since before the internet became a thing. And they literally took hold of Prophet Eddy Nawgu's images. Now, I want to just say this because that's how I feel about the whole story. These are some of the accusations that was put on Prophet Eddy Nawgu. The first one was that 16 babies had gone missing in a maternity ward in Onitsha, and for some reason, it was believed that Eddy Nawgu had a hand in them, that he took all 16 babies, pounded them into one pot and drank the blood, or sold them, as the Bakassi believed. That was one rumor. It was not backed up by anything, and to be honest with you, I don't think there's ever a record that 16 babies vanished anytime from anywhere. Like, how does 16 babies vanish from a maternity ward and the news on its own is not widespread? Because that story only came just to put Eddy Nawgu in a position of him looking like a baby thief. The only time you will hear 16 babies ever went missing in a maternity ward in Nigerian history is when they want to accuse Eddy Nawgu of doing it. If for some reason the story on its own existed, and we heard that the nurses spoke out and the nurses were arrested, and if that story on its own existed, it would make sense. But the story does not exist. Unless it does, I didn't see it. I searched. There was no time in Onitsha where 16 babies went missing, and it was not on the big scale of the news. 16 babies. Nah. The only time you get to see it is when they said Eddy Nawgu had a hand in it, which in my opinion was false, or most likely false. And this was carried out by newspapers, and many people in Onitsha at the time read it and believed it. That is the problem. They read it and they were like, oh my God, 16 babies, Eddy Nawgu, he did it. That was one accusation. The second one was that 93 men were said to have been killed and their body parts cut into pieces, and their blood and flesh were used by Prophet Eddy Nawgu for charms and juju. 93 grown men. You all accuse this man of killing 16 babies. I can get how babies could not, defend themselves, but how does one man kill 93 men? And for some weird reason, they could not tie it to him. That was a legit accusation that was printed by people who had printers and ink, and who could draw, who could sketch, who could make pictures to make it look like it happened. And these accusations was flying in the press. Pick up any newspaper, you would see it. Pick up any magazine with pictures, you would see it. These things were common back then. They said that Eddy Nawgu had a hand in killing 93 men. This is very strong and very damning. But for such accusation, he was never called to the police. He was never investigated. I mean, we know the police were corrupt at the time, but are they that corrupt that one man would be accused of stealing 16 babies and killing 93 men and they would not arrest him or question him? If he was even called for questioning, I would see a possibility of it being a thing. But this only existed in the press, and the people of Onitsha, the people of Anambra State were reading these things. These were popular. It was a bestseller. These magazines were selling. And these were rumors being made on this man's head. And since there were rumors, I will understand Prophet Eddy Nawgu would not address them because nobody had proof. It was lies. And I guess he didn't take it seriously then because maybe if he denied it, only few people would hear it. There was no social media with 1 million followers to tell. There was no Insta blog or Tunde Ednot or Gossip Mill to spread the news that this man was denying that these things happened. So where he was in his own healing center minding his business, the rumors of him stealing 16 babies and killing 93 men was spreading. And it was now eventually people started connecting the dots that he was doing this for the billionaires that were his friends, that he was doing this for the politicians and for the powerful men that he was connected to. that they are the ones sending him to do this. People started connecting the dots that he was also pushing drugs and pushing weapons for criminals and for the politicians and the billionaires that were his friends. Now, for the pushing of drugs and the pushing of the weapons, I can see how that could be possible. It's something tangible. It's not 93. It's not ridiculous like 93 men and 16 babies from one maternity ward. Pushing of drugs and pushing of guns, I can see that being a relevant or reasonable accusation. But not once was any of his friend he was associated with arrested and caught and his name was mentioned. Although the Bakassi boys did claim that a few of the thieves that they caught in Anambra State then implicated him. So that is the only part I can say, okay, maybe the guns and the weapons and the drugs could have been something that was his underground business. But it was not confirmed for a fact. He was not investigated and found guilty by the police. The police still were active, but there was nothing tangible to tie him to the police. All the boys that the Bakassi boys claimed implicated him, how I wish they took those boys to the police so the police could do their investigation of some sort. But the police did not. Eddy Nawgu was not anyone's problem. He was not a threat to anything. There was nothing the police saw directly that they could arrest him once or twice or a few times. He never got into trouble with the law. However, to the hearts, to the minds of many Anambra people, this man was the devil, based on what they've read in those magazines and newspapers that carried those false news and false stories that were not backed up by facts. So he was hated. And let's also remember that his method of spirituality was unorthodox. It was giving native doctor. It was giving sorcerer. It was giving witchcraft. It was not the way people saw T.B. Joshua's church or Pastor Chris' church that they saw his own ministry. His felt like a shrine. He was a prophet. He wasn't a pastor. Even though he claimed his sources were from God in heaven, his methods were still sketchy to a lot of people. And that was why when the rumors that he did these things were spreading, many people believed it. And that was where they hated him from, I would guess. But like we talked about, Eddy Nawgu did not see it as anything. If you think he did it, what proof do you have? Take it to the police, take him to court. Did anybody cry and say, my baby was stolen and Prophet Eddy Nawgu was seen? Or did they catch the people who stole the 16 babies and they pointed at Eddy Nawgu? Did anyone see him kill any of the 93 men? So back up these rumors, the drugs that he pushed, the guns and the weapons that is being claimed that he was hiding in his house and trafficking, there was nothing. Nothing. If there was something, I didn't see it in my research because I've been dealing with this story for over a month and there was nothing. No account recorded that anyone caught by the police implicated him. Otherwise, he would have been arrested by the police, but he was never at fault with the law. If he was doing anything illegal, he was probably doing it very secretly. I'm not saying he was a saint. I'm just saying that nothing tangible was brought and found with facts on him. And maybe that was why he did not feel the need to address those stories spreading against him, because he thought his fate was in the hands of the police. And he thought the law and the constitution in Nigeria was protecting him. But nope, because when the governor of Anambra State signed the Bakassi boys into law, acknowledging them and acknowledging their process, that was the moment Eddy Nawgu and many other people were doomed. Doomed, I tell you, doomed. So when the Bakassi boys got into Anambra State, we've already talked about they were hailed, they were cheered, yay, the heroes have come. And they were going about, they were doing their process, they were finding the thieves, they would catch all the armed robbers, they were doing whatever they were doing, their charms were still there, so they did who they want to did, and they killed who they want to kill, and yeah. However, they too started hearing of the prophet Eddy Nawgu. All those magazines, all those stories started getting to them. All the accusations started getting to them. And people started putting it in their head that the police are afraid of him, that the police could not do anything. And that was when Prophet Eddy Nawgu became of interest to the Bakassi boys. And it was now said that 13 times they went to his house to find him, they went to his church to find him, and they could not see him. It's unclear if Eddy Nawgu had tip-off It's unclear if he did have the juju or the charm or the power that could see the Bakassi boys coming. That is the claim. That is the popular belief. It's not clear how. It's not even clear if he was aware. But to be honest with you, the way he was caught, I don't think Eddy Nawgu knew these boys were even after him. You know, they were not going to announce they're coming. Maybe he was always not around when the Bakassi boys came. But the popular story is he kept disappearing. He would vanish. And so, the fact that the Bakassi boys came to find him 13 times and did not see him, they, in their mentality, in their juju and charms mentality, interpreted it as he was using his powers, his spiritual powers, to escape them, and that he had charms. And so they went to meet Ngwongworo, their leader, their manager, who did some kind of incantation and told them to go and find him. And at this time, Eddy Nawgu's powers have stopped working. And so one night, on the 4th of November, around 2 p.m., while this man was sleeping in his house with his wife and 8 children, he has 8 legitimate children, the door banged open. According to the wife's account, they heard a loud bang on their door. She woke up first and asked who was that. Before they knew it, the door was mashed open. And 40, according to her, it was like a crowd of people swamped into their house, into their bedroom. And they asked her, where is your husband? And my husband is sleeping. And they went to where the Nawgu was sleeping and dragged him out of bed. And he was confused as to who were these people. And before you know it, he was harassed. And they kept asking him, where are the weapons that you're hiding? Where are the human heads and the human parts that you've kept? Where is your shrine? And they were searching the rooms in the houses, and they saw a room with children in it. And they were like, are these the children you're selling? And the wife is like, these are our kids. Then they went to their backyard and they went to the boys' quarter and saw a child in a separate room. And they were like, oh, why is this child in a separate room? And the wife explained that the child has mental issues and they are helping the child. And that was why they kept him at a separate room. But the child is being taken care of. Even the parents of the child could confirm that. They kept insisting on the weapons. They kept insisting on the things they could use to implicate him. And as Eddy Nawgu was dragged out of his house in the middle of the night by the Bakassi boys, it is on record that nothing was picked out of his house. Not one gun, not one drug, not one child that could not be accounted for. They had nothing. The only thing they could pick out from Eddy Nawgu's home was himself. The Bakassi boys knew they had nothing against this man, other than the fact of the rumors going around. And for some weird reason, they too believed in the rumors, given what they were all about. And that was when Eddy Nawgu was dragged and at first taken to the Bakassi boys' quarters. They had their station. It's not particularly clear where he was taken to by the Bakassi boys. Sources had it that he was taken to the police station, and other sources had it that he was taken to the Bakassi's quarters. However, there was also the claim that the people of Onitsha protested the police and requested that Eddy Nawgu be handed to the Bakassi boys because they were thinking the police, in their usual fashion, will be bribed by this rich, powerful man and he would be set free. But the thing is, the police did not see anything. The police can't work with abstracts. If you say this man killed 93 men, bring the people who want to lay this accusation forward and they should bring proof. If you say he stole 16 babies, bring the people whose babies are missing, at least. Bring the hospital people, bring anyone who has claims of this story to come and present their case. If you say he's hiding drugs and hiding guns from politicians, come with these people who had the evidence that he did these things. The Bakassi boys claimed that some of the thieves that they had killed and that they have caught and killed implicated him. But you guys did not bring these people to the police to file a statement. So now the police had nothing to work with to at least persecute this so-called bad criminal that is a sorcerer and that is a native doctor, that is a witch and a wizard. But the thing is, the rumors were there and people believed strongly, and given his demeanor, everyone was certain that Prophet Eddy Nawgu was guilty of the rumors that were going around. That he was too powerful, he was too spiritual, and that the only way he could be that powerful is if indeed he did these things he was accused of. And since the Bakassi boys took him from his house, they again, in the usual fashion of the Bakassi boys, they act immediately. They know they did not have anything strong against this man. That was why they kept him for 4 extra days. While his family were trying to book their release, the family was trying to get powerful men to get him out of there. Politicians were writing letters. People were criticizing the Bakassi boys, telling them that they should bring proof. Even though the military leader at the time in Nigeria, many people were like, this is madness. What did you guys have against this man? Many people tried to get Eddy Nawgu out of this situation. But the people of Onitsha were protesting against the police. They wanted the Bakassi boys to handle it. And on the 9th of November in the year 2000, the Bakassi boys got hold of Eddy Nawgu. And this was because of the pressure that they were getting from the people. Because them on their own, they had nothing against him. But for some reason, on that 9th, they suddenly had something against him. On the 4th, they picked him from his house. They didn't have any evidence. They didn't see gun. They didn't see drugs. They didn't see head. They didn't see human flesh. But the day he was dragged to Ochanja roundabout to be executed, suddenly the Bakassi boys said they put their necklace on his neck and he confessed to these things. Suddenly they claimed they put the cutlass on his chest and it turned red. Suddenly they claimed that Eddy Nawgu confessed that he was a sorcerer and that he did all the things that he had been accused of. What is funny is there were said tape recording of Prophet Eddy Nawgu admitting to these accusations. But the problem is the recording that was circulating at the time was not Eddy Nawgu's voice. It was people enacting it on the radio. People claiming that this is what he said. Although there were still deeper claims that the Bakassi boys had the tape where they filmed him making confessions and admitting of being all the things he was accused of. But that tape did not see the light of day. They say they sent it to the governor, they sent it to the president, they sent it to the people who thought what they were doing was wrong, and they were the only ones who saw it. But we, the people, did not see it. I didn't see it. I don't know if anyone saw it. I don't know how many people saw it and said they heard it or they saw it in a video. They saw a video of Prophet Eddy Nawgu admitting to being a ritualist, killing the 93 men, stealing the babies and pounding them and using it to do charms. The Bakassi boys are claiming he said this, but there is no evidence that he did. They say they have the evidence, but I don't know. Only Obasanjo has it, I guess. I don't know who they said they sent it to. But this was the year 2000. Who was ruling at the time? I can't remember. But they claim that they sent it to the top men and the top powerful men. However, no one has seen anything till now. And that was how Prophet Eddy Nawgu was executed publicly in the presence of 20,000 people, and his body butchered like meat, and he was set ablaze by the Bakassi boys. And all the people, more than half of the 20,000 people in Onitsha market, in Ochanja roundabout at the time who witnessed this killing, were excited, were happy, they were cheerful. The man they've heard so much about, the man they've read so much about, had been killed. So what are the chances that this man was innocent? Because even up to now, history still remembers him as a sorcerer. History still remembers him as the man who did all these things. But what history also says is it was the press at the time who made these statements. It was the newspaper at the time who made these claims. This is one time that you got to understand that the press could be very dangerous. This is one instance where I feel like the press had the power to destroy someone's life. We see it today when false news of people are spreading. And thank God we have the social media where people can come out and protect their image, state their case, defend themselves. Because you can imagine how many people were killed based on rumors. I've read so much on the things and some of the notable people that the Bakassi boys killed, and I can tell you it's the same thing. Rumors, rumors, rumors. And that was why they were not tangible. And that was why when they came to Anambra State, it didn't take long for them to start getting the backlash. At the point, people started realizing that these Bakassi boys are doing too much. You mean to tell the whole world that somebody is guilty of murder because you wore him a necklace that sparked? You put a knife on his chest that turned red. Over time, the people started saying that, wait, this does not make sense. People started saying that this is ridiculous. And the only way people started saying this was when the Bakassi boys started targeting their loved ones. Oh, they've killed the Prophet Eddy Nawgu. Wow, the Bakassi boys are so good. Then the moment they come for your loved one and someone you know, you're like, oh, wait, really? That's when these people will start using their head to think that, is that what they're basing it off? Yes. When they killed Prophet Eddy, you were happy that they did because the cutlass and their chains and their juju told them to do so. But when it came to your loved one, all of a sudden you're seeing them for who they were. Subsequently, the Bakassi boys' operation will die down. We still have more vigilante group who use charms and juju till this day, but many of them are not longer executioners. What they do now is if they find you wanting, they take you to the police, and if there is no case, you're back and free. So the only thing I can say is the Bakassi boys may have been the one to inspire modern day vigilante groups who use charms and wear tie red and, do a lot of this militia stuff. It's not clear if any Bakassi boy was arrested or held accountable for the crimes that they committed, because let me tell you, that was summary execution. That summary execution and extrajudicial execution was a crime. The only problem or the only thing that could save them was the fact that they were in the constitution. The Anambra state government had already signed them and acknowledged them. So yeah, you knew what they were doing. The governor knew their methods and still signed them into the constitution. So no one was held accountable. But this is my thing. Many people still believe Prophet Eddy was the devil that they say he was, and the Bakassi boys did the world a favor. But given everything that we know for a fact, do you guys still think Prophet Eddy was innocent? Or do you think the Bakassi boys were right for killing him based off the fact that he may have been guilty of the crimes he was accused of? Let me know your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. If there's anything that we may have missed out, remember this story is based off of research. If you are directly close to the story, or you've had your one-on-one experience with the Bakassi boys and you can confirm whether or not their method was tangible or problematic, let me know your thoughts. If there's anything about Prophet Eddy that you know for a fact that we did not know, let us know. I'm not very perfect. I wasn't there. I didn't know this story firsthand. However, based on what is out there, this was what we could tell. So let me know your thoughts. Thank you for watching.